Hey Dream Chasers, it's JC, and I want to talk to you today about project planning and managing deadlines. This isn't something I was ever really good at. I was the kid who stayed up the night before a paper was due and did the whole thing in one night. Sometimes I'd stay home sick from school the day it was due just to finish it. You know, the every day that it's late you drop a letter grade loophole. But that doesn't work in the real world. Hell, I'm not even sure it works anymore in high school, because don't teachers make you email papers now? Anyway, I had to figure out how to not be that person anymore. To be honest, if you're good at planning and making deadlines, this video may feel like common sense to you. Even if you're bad at it, it might feel like common sense to you, but I find that knowing something and actually putting in those habits into practice are not the same thing. So the first thing I do when I have a new project is I break it down into smaller tasks. With art, that's usually pretty easy to do. For me, it usually looks something like this: thumbnails, a sketch, a better sketch, line art, flats, then shading. Depending on your approach to art, that might break down differently, but you get the idea. Then, I give myself a deadline for each one of those stages. This is to avoid the do-it-all the night before approach that I skated by with in high school. This breakdown works for me, but you know your own workflow, so you can probably tweak this to work for you. And obviously it's going to be a little different for projects other than illustrations. To show you what I mean, here's how I broke down an 8-page comic project. I already had a rough sketch, but I had 5 weeks to turn it into a finished comic, and I had a lot to do in that time. So, week 1, page layout. I took all the sketches that I did and edited the layout a bit. I didn't have the scale quite right, and my first draft was actually 9 pages, so I had to condense some things. Week 2, print out all the page layouts and trace them using a light box onto mixed media paper. Week 3, ink. Week 4, color and paint, and week 5, I did the lettering. Of course, this didn't actually go as planned because nothing ever does. The page layout went by super quickly, so I started tracing a little bit earlier than I expected, which was great because coloring took a little longer than I thought it would. I wasn't sure how long lettering would take because I'm fairly new to it, so I originally gave myself a little more time than I thought I needed to do it just to be on the safe side, but I started late on the lettering since the coloring stage took so long, so it kind of worked out. And even though I didn't make every single one of those little mini deadlines, and I sailed past others, I made my whole project deadline because I didn't foolishly leave it all for the end. I think having these smaller deadlines kind of tricks the procrastinator in me who loves to save all the work till the end. Because I still did that in all these little mini deadlines. Sometimes I waited until the day the first stage is due and then I get it all done in a night. But that's still not nearly as stressful as when you're doing an entire project in one night. I find this method to be a really good balance between giving myself pressure and motivation to get it done and giving myself plenty of time to finish. To help keep me track of all these little mini deadlines, I added all these dates to my Google Calendar and to my bullet journal, so I had multiple reminders of the deadlines. I'm pretty forgetful, so it's really helpful to have those reminders in multiple places. I also have a progress bar for projects in my bullet journal. I draw a little progress bar for each project and I fill it in with a highlighter as I work on it. I make the bar 10 squares long and I fill in 2 squares after I've done a sketch, 4 after I've cleaned up a sketch, 6 after line work, 8 after flats, etc. It helps me really visualize how much I've done and how much more I have left to do, which can be really motivating because it sucks to have a task that you can't cross off your list for a whole month. So I find that filling out a little progress bar gives me that satisfaction for the work I'm doing in the meantime. Of course, you don't always have one big project to manage, but several. It can be really tricky to keep track of who already got back to you and which projects you should be working on and which ones you have to wait. And so to stay organized, I use Trello to keep track of my commissions. I have a list of who's interested, who's paid, which commissions I've started, which ones I'm waiting to hear back from, and which ones I've completed. You can easily drag each project between all of the lists, and you can add notes and progress images. It's really helpful because it's a visual way to track progress and keep everything in one place, and you can share it with your clients so they know what's going on with your queue. The other thing that really helps me get important deadlines finished is letting go of the less important things and accepting help when I can. When I've got a lot going on, I make sure to communicate that with my partner, and I make a game plan with him about how to handle stuff like cooking meals, doing chores, and I also occasionally take weeks off of making YouTube videos when I have a lot of other stuff going on. That's not to say that YouTube isn't important to me. It's a huge priority of mine. I've made over 100 videos in the past year and a half, and making videos is something I'm passionate about. But it takes a back seat when I have an obligation for a client or a project that I've signed a contract for. It's not worth trying to juggle deadlines and obligations and making myself sick to keep up with the video schedule. As much as I consider my channel a serious commitment, it's not a full-time job and it's not something that I have to do. It's something I want to do. And running myself ragged and pulling all-nighters just to make sure I put out a video every week is a recipe for burnout. Which leads me to another important thing to keep in mind when you have projects to manage. Take breaks and take care of yourself. You still need to sleep and stretch and eat a damn vegetable once in a while. It's very tempting to justify skipping exercise or grabbing fast food or skipping meals and just generally ignoring what your body needs because you're too busy to do all that. But sleep, exercise, drinking enough water, these are not things you can catch up on or cut corners on. Ultimately, you're going to be a lot more productive if you're healthy. I know you know this, but I need you to grok it. Really believe it and understand it. Write it down on a sticky note to drink water if you have to. I catch myself thinking a lot, okay, after this line, I'll go downstairs and get more water. And then I realize I'm using something that I need to function and live as a reward. And that's not healthy. It's one thing to say, oh, okay, I'll check Twitter after this task, but water? Now when I find myself thinking that, I put my stylus down immediately and I walk away from my desk for a few minutes because that's not healthy. And lastly, it's important to point out that no matter how good you get at managing projects, there's only so many hours in the day and you can only take on so much. It sucks, but sometimes you just gotta turn stuff down. You're totally allowed to say no. It takes practice, but it actually gets easier with practice, I promise. And by the way, I did make my deadline for this comic project you see in the video, and it's been published. It's printed, it's a real tangible thing that people can buy, and this is the first time that I've ever had a comic published, so I'm really excited. If you would like to pick up a signed copy, there's a link in the description to my shop. It was published in the summer 2019 issue of the Oneshi Press comic anthology. It's a really cool project featuring a ton of indie artists and writers, and I am super proud to be a part of it. So again, there's a link in the description if you want to buy that and own a physical copy. But also, if you're interested in supporting the Oneshi Press anthology, you can check out their Patreon, make sure that more anthologies like this get printed, and you can submit your own comic if you are interested in doing that. So there's a link to their Patreon and their website below. Check it out. Anyway, let me know in the comments if you have any tips for how you break apart projects and plan for deadlines. Let's help each other get better. Thanks again for watching. Until next time, chase your dreams. Peace.